I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I thought I'd start today's proceedings by playing kind of an interesting game. It's called the Who Am I quiz. So let's see how sharp you all are tonight. The only thing I ask that you do is to not blurt out the answer whether you think you're right or whether you know you're right. True. Just, who am I? Okay? I was born in one country, raised in another. My father was born in another country. I was not his only child. He fathered several children with numerous women. I became very close to my mother as my father showed no interest in me. Although my father deserted me and my mother raised me, I later wrote a book idolizing my father, not my mother. Later in life, questions arose over my real name. My birth records were sketchy. No one was able to produce a legitimate, reliable birth certificate. I grew up practicing one faith, but converted to Christianity as it was widely accepted in my new country. But I practiced non-traditional beliefs and didn't follow Christianity except in the public eye under scrutiny. I worked and lived among lower class people as a young adult, disguising myself as someone who really cared about them. That was before I decided it was time to get serious about my life and embarked on a new career. I wrote a book about my struggles growing up. It was clear to those who read my memoirs that I had difficulties accepting that my father abandoned me as a child. I became active in local politics in my 30s. Then, with the help of behind the scenes, I literally burst onto the scene as a candidate for national office in my 40s. They said I had a golden tongue and could talk anyone into anything. I had a virtually non-existent resume, little work history, no experience in leading a single organization. Yet, I was a powerful speaker, and citizens were drawn to me as though I were a magnet and they were small roofing tacks. I love that. I drew incredibly large crowds during my public appearances. This bolstered my ego. At first, my political campaign focused on my country's foreign policy. I was very critical of my country in the last war and seized every opportunity to bash my country. But what launched my rise to national prominence were my views on the country's economy. I pretended to have a really good plan on how we could do better, and every poor person would be fed and housed for free. I knew which group was responsible for getting into this terrible mess. It was the free markets, banks, and corporations. I decided to start making citizens hate them. And if they became envious of others who did well, then the plan was clinched tight. I called mine a people's campaign. That sounded good to all people. I was the surprise candidate because I emerged from outside the traditional path of politics and was able to gain widespread popular support. I knew that if I merely offered the people hope, together we could change our country and the world. So I started to make my speeches sound like they were on behalf of the downtrodden, the poor, the ignorant, to include persecuted minorities. My true views were not widely known, and I kept them unknown until after I became my nation's leader. I had to carefully guard reality, as anybody could have easily found out what I really believed if they had simply read my writings and examined those people that I associated with. I'm glad they didn't. Then I became the most powerful man in the world. And then the world learned the truth. Who am I? Adolf Hitler.
Yeah. Wow.
What? Were you guys thinking I was talking about somebody else? Oh, whoa, okay.
But the Supreme Court has just handed down, in my opinion, what I think is a landmark decision, and I don't think the people in this room are going to like it a bit. In a 5-4 decision, our very own Supreme Court has just ruled that we are no longer allowed to have a nativity scene nor a Christmas tree in our nation's capital. Now, this isn't for any religious reasons. They just couldn't find 3 wise men in D.C. Now, a search for a virgin continues. but they did, however, find more than enough asses to fill the stable. There has been a paradigm shift in this nation. And because of Barack Obama and the leftist liberals in Congress, the shift is about to hit the fan. The United States, the country that I love and you love, we all love, she is hurting right now. The United States is going bankrupt. We have gone from one nation under God to, unfortunately, one nation underwater. And you will hear people all the time get on TV, especially my good personal friend Debbie Wasserman Schultz. You will hear the leftists get on TV all the time, and even people from the Republican Party. And they will say that they are going to do everything that they possibly can to make sure that they are reducing the deficit. The deficit. When you hear them say that, what you have to understand is that when they say that they are going to reduce the deficit, what they are not saying is that they are not going to reduce the debt. And it will be the debt and the interest on that debt that may just destroy the greatest republic this world has ever known. Right now, this nation is saddled over $15.6 trillion in gross national debt. That is a huge number. And when we start talking about billions and trillions, it's hard to put it in context so everyday people, lay people, can understand that. And that's one of the problems that we have in explaining these problems. So I'm going to try to put $15.6 trillion in gross national debt in context for you here tonight. If you got Congress to stop all spending today, got them to agree not to spend a single nickel on anything else, and at the same time got them to agree to pay down the debt at the tune of $100 million a day, it is going to take this nation 418 years just to pay it off. This is the situation that our Congress has put us in, and this is the challenge for just not our generation, but for future generations to come. And it's not like Congress is spending this money on worthwhile projects. Did you know that last year alone, our federal government spent more than, or paid more than 20,000 separate benefit payments to dead people to the tune of over $182 million. When it comes to the federal government, it pays to be dead. Now, there is no truth to the rumor that some of these people still vote in Chicago. I just want to lay that rumor to rest right now. And if 15.6 is our credit card, just like the people in this room, you have credit cards and most of you have a mortgage. But we very rarely, very seldom hear about what our nation's mortgage is. If 15.6 is our gross national debt, our credit card, what is our nation's mortgage? That is what we call unfunded liabilities. And unfunded liabilities, in layman's terms, is simply this. It's the amount. You gotta forgive me, I'm Italian too. How you doing? I use my hands. Unfunded liabilities is simply this. It is the amount of money that we would need in order to fund Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security for the next 75 years. What is that number? Try $118 trillion. That number is unfathomable. 118 trillion is an astronomical number. I'm going to try to put that in context for you right here, right now also. If you took every single publicly traded stock, in every single publicly traded stock market, in every single country around the world, sold all of that stock to raise the cash from the sale, you wouldn't even have half of the money that you would need to pay that. So by any other metric, and don't let the people lie to you when they tell you that everything is fine. It is not even close. By any other metric, whether it be a natural person or a corporation, this government has bankrupted this nation already. Don't let anybody tell you anything different. And you will hear people on the left get on TV all the time and say, don't worry about it. I don't know what these people were talking about. I don't know why these people are sounding the alarm. This fiscal nightmare is 20, 30, 40 years down the road. No, it's not. There is a tsunami of red ink heading for the shores of this nation in as little as 10 years. So when they tell you that you have 20, 30, 40 years, they're lying to you. It's as simple as that, because they don't want you to know how bad it really is. Here's a crazy stat for you. I just figured this out the other day. If you take our gross national debt, and if you take our unfunded liabilities, that means each U.S. family is on the hook for over $1.6 million. This is the hole that they have dug for you. And now, Barack Obama and the people in Congress are just supercharging the insolvency of this nation. You know, I think a lot of people would say that Ronald Reagan was a pretty darn good president. And ever since Reagan left office, this nation has slowly gone by the wayside. Here's a crazy stat for you. Since 1988, since Ronald Reagan's last year in office, our nation has spent over $8 trillion just on the interest payments on the debt. $8 trillion just on the interest payments. Now that is enough to give a Lotus Evora dream car to every taxpayer in this nation. $8 trillion. If you want to know where the prosperity of this nation went or is going, there it's going. In interest payments, going overseas, making some other nation prosperous, or some other person prosperous. Not us. And the scary part is, if you look at Barack Obama's budget that he put forth 2 months ago, since 1988 up until present day, $8 trillion worth of interest payments. In the next 10 years, according to the Office of Management and Budget, Barack Obama's budget will be paying $6 trillion just in the interest payments just over the next 10 years. And you will hear people say that, don't worry about it, they're cutting. They're doing everything that they're doing, they're cutting. They're not cutting, not even close, not by a long shot. Government was growing very, very, very quickly, so what did they do? They scaled back. It's only growing very, very quickly. Right now we are at $15.6 trillion in gross national debt. In 10 short years, our nation will have $26 trillion in gross national debt. What are they cutting? They're not cutting anything. And in 10 short years, with $26 trillion in gross national debt, we will be paying $1.1 trillion just in the interest payments in 2022, in just 1 year. Now I'm going to show you right now why this debt will be the destroyer of this nation and will evaporate our liberties from the inside. Now, I don't think anybody in this room, or anybody who's thinking clearly, who understands that we are printing money and monetizing our debt just to pay our bills, that we are only going to be paying 5.3% on our interest rates. We know that we're headed for a high inflationary environment, a hyperinflationary environment, if you will. So if you take $26 trillion in debt, and if you assign the average interest rate that we paid on our debt under Ronald Reagan, when we had that high interest rate environment, the average that we paid under Reagan was 10.5%. If you take 26 trillion and assign an interest rate of 10.5%, that means in just 10 short years, we may be paying $2.6 trillion just in interest payments in just 1 year. Now, to put that in context, right now the federal government only takes in about $2.2 trillion. $2.2 trillion worth of federal revenue now. This is a recipe for disaster. We should be sounding the alarm, because we are closer to insolvency than you think and that anybody, especially on the left, would admit to. And it's not like Barack Obama is concerned with this problem. Barack Obama and the liberals in Congress are more concerned with paying off their political allies than they are with paying down the debt. And I love it when my good personal friend Debbie Wasserman Schultz gets on MSNBC, and her rhetoric is that corporations are the evil of this nation. Corporations are the one that are buying political influence with their campaign contributions. Again, not even close, not by a long shot. Did you know that over the last 22 years alone, over the last 22 years, unions have given more money to candidates and political parties than Wall Street investment banks and the oil and gas industry and the defense industry, the pharmaceutical manufacturers, airlines, auto manufacturers, and savings and loans combined. Unions have given more money to candidates and political parties than all of those segments of our industry combined. So it's not the corporations who are determining political discourse and the way we govern a nation, it's the unions. And that's the sad reality of it. My problem with all of this is that 92% of all of these political donations go to just one political party. Now I'm going to narrow it down for you, it's not the Republican Party. And the unions will do everything that they possibly can to make sure that they get Barack Obama elected. Did you know that in 2008, taxpayers paid more than $170 million of your tax money to pay union workers not to work, but to pursue union activities? To purposely go out there so they can campaign to influence elections. Unions have even made Election Day a holiday in some states, just so they can go out and vote for the people that they choose. And it's not just the unions that Barack Obama is banking on and making sure that he gets reelected. It's people who are being enslaved in the cradle to the grave entitlement society that we are fostering right now. You know, we keep on talking about this cradle to the grave entitlement society, and we're wondering, when is it going to come? We're already here. Did you know that 41% of all live births in this nation are paid for by government?
Oh.
60% of elderly long-term care paid for by government. Cradle to the grave. We're already here. Now, you know that old saying, right? Give a man a fish and he. Teach a man to fish and he. No, you take away a Democrat voter, I'm just saying. Did you know that 1 out of every 3 people in this nation, 1 out of every 3 are on food stamps, subsidized housing, cash welfare, or Medicaid? 1 out of 3. Now, mind you, I did not say Social Security nor Medicare. Those are the things that you have paid into, and in my opinion, you should have a right to take out. These are the quote-unquote free things that are given by the government. And the sad reality of it is that the government will do everything that they can in order to get more people on the government dole. That's the reality of it. Does anybody in here know what the federal program SNAP is? SNAP. Many of you don't. Some of you do. SNAP. Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Food stamps. A couple of years ago, the USDA made a conscious choice to change the program name from food stamps to SNAP for the sole purpose of taking away the stigma of being on food stamps so they can get more people on the government dole. The Obama campaign actually gave one state, the state of Oregon, a $5 million bonus because they did such a good job with getting people on the government dole. And the USDA actually gives out grants to companies that fund marketing campaigns for the sole purpose of getting more people on the food stamp program. The government, especially the federal government, is actively seeking out people to get them on the government dole. Because we all know in this room that once you start to get something for free, it's very, very difficult to give it up. And most people will vote with their wallets, especially if they're getting free stuff. And that is the sad reality of it. That is the sad reality of it. And it is not just the freebies and these entitlement programs. The federal government is using the U.S. tax code to re-engineer the electorate. I'm sure a lot of people in this room have heard the stat that 47% of all people in the nation don't pay any federal income taxes, right? You've all heard that. But what does that mean? The same way we have to put $15.6 trillion in context and $118 trillion in context, we need to put 47% in context. This is going to scare you, and this is one of the reasons why I think this nation is where it is right now. Under Ronald Reagan, the percentage of people in this nation that did not pay any federal income taxes was only 19%. There were more people who paid into the program who had more skin in the game when Ronald Reagan was president than any president in modern history. But as soon as Ronald Reagan left office, this is what happened. Under George Bush Sr., it went to 21.4%. Under Clinton, 24.1%. Under George W. Bush, 30.3%. And now Barack Obama has 47% of all the people in this nation not paying a single dime in federal income taxes. And with his plan, it's only going to go higher. And now that brings me to the scariest number of all. It's not 15.6 trillion, it's not 47%, it's not 118 trillion. It's 144 million. That is the approximate number of people in this nation who did not pay a single dime in federal income taxes. These people have no skin in the game. And this is why that scenario is so scary. We have all been told that the reason why this nation is in the economic doldrums that it is right now is because of the housing market. And how did the housing market get to where it is right now? Because people who had less than stellar credit were buying homes with little or no down payment, right? You've all heard that. Well, if you look at the United States, we're really no different. The United States has less than stellar credit right now. We have already been downgraded by S&P, and we've been threatened to be downgraded by Moody's. So you can say that the United States has less than stellar credit. And with 144 people having no skin in the game, it is a recipe for disaster. It has already had disastrous effects on our economy, and it will have disastrous effects on our government, on our nation, and political discourse for decades to come. And that's why you will see now politicians are buying the votes with what used to be our money.